Another episode of The Next Fix. Today we've got Joseph Lenard, right? And so this gentleman is festive, if you haven't noticed. For people that can't see him, he's rocking like a Christmas light necklace. This is a
For
person.
Valentine's Day, hearts, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, man. 'Tis the season. We're spreading love. We're spreading joy. But, that all sounds great. Is rainbows and tulips and flashing necklaces. But Joseph, I want you to introduce yourself, and then I want you to dive right in. Like, what does your comeback story look like? When did things really when was it tough for you, and what did it look like?
Yeah, I am Joseph Lenard. It looks French. It's not Lenard. It's actually derived from Polish, Lenard Łaskowicki or whatever. I've not gone far enough in the family genealogy to find what it originally was, but Leonard without an O, and I have to use my middle initial, so Joseph M. Lenard, because there is a Joseph Lenard who is also a Christian author out of South Carolina. I'm in Michigan, so I have to make that distinction. And I always
Yeah.
joke, no, I am not he is not me. We are two different people, and neither of us will be confused for Shakespeare.
Well, well. For the record, Joseph, I never thought you were like that other Joseph. Anyway, man, that guy. Yeah. Who cares?
I've gotten emails like, what did you mean when you said this the last so far? And I've
Right.
tried reaching out to him. I'd love to have him on my show and whatnot, but hey, he never gets back to anybody, it seems.
Right. Right. And now I do want to know though, you kind of touched on a couple of things in this show. We most of the time, these comeback stories, they involve substances, right? And you shared something about that real briefly there, but you're familiar what it feels like to come off of narcotics, right? And so
Yes,
how
yes,
did you get on that? What was the
yeah.
genesis of that experience?
Well, I'm a former IT guy, and at some point, all the lack of sleep through interruptions through the night, being on call all the time, my body eventually basically said, if you're not going to slow down, we're going to shut down and force you to slow down. So that's why I'm on disability these days. So, yeah, there was a 2 year period I was on 2 Xanax a day every day for like a 2 year period. So while I don't have what's called an addictive personality type, I do understand through that when it came time to, okay, you no longer hopefully need to keep using that as a crutch due to anxiety and stress to
Sure.
come off it. I went through those physical withdrawals. They're very real. That is separate and apart. The physical addiction is separate and apart from the mental addictive type thing.
Right. And so what is your perception, to dig further into differentiation like you and that other Joseph Leonard, but what is the differentiation in your words like between the mental elements of the addiction and then what maybe you went through with the physical withdrawals?
Yeah, I mean, I have always I have a table full of drugs and supplements over here still, but I'd always been the I'd rather not take medications if I don't need it for that very reason, especially a narcotic. There are there are always side effects to any drug, narcotic or not. And so I was concerned about it, but there was a time I needed it. And indeed, the side effects. I went through all that period of paranoia and everything associated with Xanax, and I wasn't the same person while on them, right?
Sure.
So there's that mental aspect as well as the physical aspect coming off a narcotic. Again, whether it be a street drug or a legal drug, a narcotic is a narcotic.
Yeah, that's, looking back at like the whole opioid crisis, not that we're out of it, but in the trenches of it, like when I was getting prescribed, you know, copious amounts of painkillers, opioid narcotic painkillers. It was enough, opiates to kill a rhinoceros. And I knew that the pharmaceutical grade of the drugs was superior to the street versions and 10 times more addictive, right? Because of its purity and that type of thing. And so many people, when they do, either try to get off of the medication or they're forced to, right? They're looking for a substitution. And that's when things get really hairy, is when they're in the streets and they're getting this sub level of drugs. Now they're chasing the same thing that the pharmaceutical grade was giving them, but now they have to settle for this, dirtier version, and it gets ugly. And now with the fentanyl and everything, it's like deaths are around every single purchase of street drugs. Now it doesn't matter what kind you get. It's a potentially
Yeah.
fentanyl-filled bag,
Yeah.
right? And so it's
Even those selling it do not necessarily know what's in it. They may honestly be thinking they're giving you a Xanax equivalent, not knowing that there is indeed fentanyl in it and it can kill. Because the drug dealer doesn't want to kill off his customers,
you're right.
right?
It
He
doesn't make any sense.
wants the income to keep coming in.
Right. Right. And honestly, I consider myself a professional in alleyway commerce, and that's not good business if you're killing your people. And I laugh, but it's really happening. It's quite the tragedy. I'm really glad that you don't have an addictive personality. And, if I were in that room full of that table full of drugs, I can assure you half of them would be gone by the time I left. But now you've also been up against the ropes with some other stuff too, right? Like cancer has been a part of your comeback story, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah,
how's that going?
I didn't choose the hairdo or the lack thereof. For those who can see, I'm not a neo-Nazi skinhead. I have a bald head because 2010 I went through leukemia and the chemo and all that, and once it came out, I've just been shaving it ever since. And to look at the glass half full aspect of it, I'm saving a ton of money on shampoo and conditioner. And I don't have to blow dry my hair for 30 minutes a day. It's a great time saver.
Sure, sure. And I gotta be honest, you've got a spherical head, and
Yeah.
I don't. So, like, if I were to be bald, man, I don't want to tell you what my head is shaped like, but it's a phallic symbol, and it's not cool. So, but yeah, so you got through the cancer. Like, how did
Yeah,
you went?
still in remission. So I was at a point where, and this comes, I'm not happy to talk about, but I feel it necessary. 2004, 6 years before, after the Xanax period, I still had the Xanax. One night, it was like I left myself. I was there, I was present, I could see and hear what was going on, but it was as if something else took control. I reached over, took a Xanax, then took two, then took a handful, then took the rest of the bottle. So, yes, I am a suicide attempt survivor also. And why in my books, Complicated Life and Living, the latest, the fourth in my Life and Living series, I talk about every life has value and meaning. Whether you see it or not, it's not like It's a Wonderful Life and Clarence is going to come down and show you all the wonderful things you've done and what life would be without you. Little things you will never acknowledge or remember add up. I call it the Pantene shampoo effect. Remember the ad? They tell two people, then they tell two people, then they tell two, right? Eventually you get an exponential movement. And
Right.
in the book of Kennedy, Project Carpe Diem, I go into that. A smile she gives to someone else having a bad day, who then lives and goes on to remarry and has a child who then goes on to cure a cancer. Well, what role did that smile play that no one remembers, no one pays attention to, but a butterfly effect, to quote another movie,
Right.
right? That one little seemingly insignificant act had a massive butterfly effect later that you, again, Clarence isn't gonna come down and tell you, but
Yeah.
it doesn't mean it ain't true. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, hey, Joseph, I wanna know, man, like, so you had kind of expressed that experience of taking the Xanax, and then now you had been off of the Xanax, you still had the medication because, you're
there's
not
still a
well, right?
bottle of it over there, but I never take it more than 2 days in a row. I never wanna go through that physical withdrawal ever again.
So when you took the first one now, and if you don't know the answer to this, I get it. You're laying there. Was suicide your initial motivation, or was it just like an alleviation of the pain and the kind of sorrow? What was the initial goal to start
Yeah.
taking?
A little of both. I had
Yeah.
had suicidal thoughts before that, but that particular night, did I consciously make that decision to attempt to take my life? No. I was there, I was present, but again, it was as if another force, a demon had taken over. And the next thing I know, I'm waking up in the hospital after having stomach pumped and whatnot.
How did you somebody, was there somebody else in the home? I mean, how did you get found?
Yeah, my mother, for whatever reason, felt compelled to come over and check up on me, right? She had a key to the house. She came in, found me on the kitchen floor with the refrigerator open. I was about to do whatever. I was still functioning as a human, apparently hungry or thirsty at the fridge, but there I was on the floor, and the rest,
Yeah,
as you would imagine, it would go. So,
sure.
but yeah, if she wouldn't have had been moved by spirit or whatever to come and check on me, I wouldn't be here today. And God wasn't done with me. And I like to think these books that
Yeah.
I'm authoring are part of that to spread that message. Every life has value and meaning. Whether you see it or not doesn't make it untrue. You
Now
won't know it. It's the demons, it's the negative Nelly thoughts that most people have on occasion that try to convince you your life is worthless. And it's not true. It may
sure.
not be
Yeah.
an elegant, great life that you're, again, overly dramatic like a movie doing these big, great
Right.
things.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
became I became a number one best-selling author. That might not be in the cards for you. So what?
And
Doesn't matter.
for the record, my book was number 1 in the alcoholism genre. So I got on I would hit number 1 somewhere, right? And so now I also want to talk about something you had pointed out, and I have spoken about this a few times. Suicide. It's not a light switch, right? It's not like I'm trying to kill myself or I'm not trying to kill myself. It's more of a spectrum. And there had been times in my life where people would ask me, "Are you actively trying to kill yourself?" And I would answer them, and this is when I was not sober. This is when I was under the influence and not doing well. And I would say things like, "I kind of just don't care whether I live." And it
Yeah.
wasn't like I wasn't I didn't have a razor to my veins. I didn't have a noose around my neck. However, I had very little motivation to keep on living. So I would, like you with the Xanax, or, a person who has just thrown kind of caution to the wind with their own life. It was like I didn't care if I lived, and I knew that the stakes were high, and the likelihood of me dying if I were to continue those habits was also high, and I did it anyway because I just didn't care if I lived. And that's a very I think it's a more common headspace than we imagine, and a lot of the people that don't understand it think of it as a light switch on or off, and
Yeah.
that's kind of how during those times, I would be asked, like, "Are you actively trying to kill yourself?" And I would just be like, "Well, it's harder to answer than that."
Yeah.
Like,
And
there's more
and
to it.
everybody's story is maybe similar, but not exactly the same. Everyone's life is different. Everyone's situation is different. And it can be chemical or it can be emotional, right? Because the drugs generally they didn't help me. I was on Paxil and Seroquel and
Right.
what's the famous one originally? Whatever.
Respirone? Respirone?
I No, I was never on that one, but there are various ones that try to deal with a chemical imbalance. Well, it's not always that. It can be a thought issue, and hence the serenity prayer that right? And I've never done this. I'd like to read a passage from my complicated book that deals with the serenity prayer
Go ahead.
because that doesn't apply to just those with addictions. It applies in life to everyone. Today, however, in his still exhausted state, speaking of Franklin, the lead character, he might not be able to keep his composure, keep control of his emotions. And anyone and everyone can experience that at a time, fly off the handle in response. He might have the wrong button pushed, a detonator. Frank said aloud, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. The serenity prayer. While Frank was not a heavy drinker, he just occasionally had a beer or two during a sporting event. The prayer practice often associated with addiction recovery services meetings. Though it applies to anyone and everyone, knowing they would have a difficult day to cope with others, as Frank clearly had in his mind that day, would struggle with that day. To thine self be true, as the saying goes, matters in so many ways beyond how commonly applied. Shape the phrase into new forms to fit modern life. Be honest about what can or cannot be accomplished. The serenity applies, prayer applies in so many ways. We have to be realistic with ourselves in understanding, again, our value and purpose isn't solely based on our own self worth or lack thereof.
Yeah, I always appreciate that the realistic element, and I enjoy the Stoic philosophy approach, but it boils down to don't worry about things that you cannot influence or make better. Stay focused on your sphere of influence and do what you can where you can. But then there's the unrealistic and which I say that loosely as a person of faith myself, but I believe faith is very realistic. But some people won't take it that way because you can't see it or touch it. However, the relinquishing of control, right, and surrender, I believe that that's like I suppose it can be considered less realistic. Both of them are important, right? And I do think that that's why the serenity prayer is so powerful for so many people, why it really hits home and why people can apply it, right? That's really what I think knocks it out. Now, you read that from your book and you were talking about a character. Is that so? Now, in that book, is it a fictional book or what is how is it?
Yeah, in that case, it's fiction,
Yeah.
exactly. But the fourth in the Life and Living series, all different characters, but all with one similar underlying theme as well as other subplots. But the main theme, life and living. And this is a fallen world. There's no such thing as perfect. Things are going to go right, things are going to go wrong. I always have my characters repeat my life philosophy. Things could always be better, they could often be worse. Remember, no matter how bad it is for you, there are others who, yeah, have it a whole lot easier and better. But there are people, especially in America, sorry, but the reality is we are so bleeping spoiled and entitlement attitudes. Give me, give me, give me. I
Yeah.
should have, you're right, but you shall be known by your fruits. You must sow to reap. So the serenity prayer about the wisdom to know the difference. Doesn't mean if you're passionate about something, don't try to make a change. Just understand it might not happen. That doesn't mean you shouldn't try. Just don't be upset when a change doesn't occur overnight. And I've shared a few memes. One, I have my own Christitutionalist podcast show. I do a show on memes. And one meme I have is about planting seeds. It is our job to plant seeds. It is God's job, and don't confuse our place versus God's, to then water and fertilize and help that seed grow. We can plant the seeds in people's minds. We can't hold a gun to their head and force it to grow there.
Right.
That's God's territory. And another meme that I've got printed here is from a Truth Social post Chris Williams posted. Life is so ironic. It takes sadness to know what happiness is, noise to appreciate silence, and absence to value presence. These, that's not from the Bible, but it's very biblical.
Well, it's contrast, and I think that understanding that contrast is necessary can help when you're in the darker moments. So when you understand that as dark as your life may get, it will often result in you having appreciation for when it's not so. Meaning, right? So like if you're in a horrible, horrible place like yourself, you're addicted to Xanax. Well, I'm sorry. You were what's a better word here, but you get it, right? You're taking
Yeah.
Xanax, you got off of it, and then you had cancer. Those are horrible moments in your life, but they're also seeds in your appreciation for when you don't have cancer and you're not hooked on Xanax. And so we can all frame our opportunities for the lesson. We can all do it that way. And I don't want to sound annoyingly positive because I understand. Like people are like, shut up, man. Yeah, like everything's going well for you. But the only reason why I do
But
find,
reality is the
yeah,
glass half full or the glass half empty is a choice. And like Rush, not Limbaugh, the rock group, right? If you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. Again, not in the Bible, but very biblical in its delivery. Fight the good fight. If you're not at least attempting to sow good, implicit in the evil. And indeed, I think you used the word contrast. Yet you can't understand and really appreciate the good times if you've never experienced a bad time.
yeah, that's a massive takeaway, man. So you're filled with so much passion about these books. And I'm imagining that's like, you've been through tough times. I guess what was the catalyst for you saying, I'm going to start writing about this and I'm going to start kind of sending a message through fictional stories about the meaning of life? I mean, if I'm putting it too simply.
Yeah, I have both fiction. Again, the Life and Living series is all fictional books, but I also have a Christitutionalist politics nonfiction series that discusses the differences in our Judeo Christian foundations and biblical truth versus worldly lies. But yeah, coming out of the suicide, I'd always written. My dad was Thaddeus M. Leonard Jr. Ted Leonard Jr. and the Polka Kings. They had 3 record deal. They traveled all over east of the Mississippi. He had his legacy. It'll last forever. Coming out of the suicide with further recognition and appreciation that all life has value and meaning, knowing God wasn't done with me yet, and I needed to spread that message. Do that how? Publishing internationally, something I had not done to that point.
Okay.
No longer being able to work, being on disability, what can I do? I like to joke from my ugly couch here, hidden behind my green screen. Even though Riverside won't let me project a nice image on it, that's what you're staring at. Staring at my ugly green screen's better than staring at, see the junk on the couch there, right?
Right.
I'm not a hoarder, but I am a slob. So there's stuff all over the place. But yeah, sharing, I feel called to share that message. I've been there. I felt my life was worthless and going nowhere. But after all that, I recognized the small things add up to something exponentially far more important, and that message is probably why I'm still here, and I need to share that with people. Again, my story isn't yours. You may not be an author, although I have to joke, everyone has a story in them, and I have a how to write a book and get it published book. So
Okay.
if you have a story you want to tell, my book about books can help you write and publish your book. Right? But that may not be you. That may
Right.
not be your role. Your role might be those small smiles that have a massive butterfly effect that you may never ever know amounts to something.
I
Doesn't
think
mean it isn't true.
I really enjoy understanding. I enjoy biblical principle of creation. And I strongly recommend for anyone who might be in a dark place, think about creating something. The efforts and then, maybe it evolves into something or maybe it doesn't. But the process of creation, and that goes when I say creation, it could be anything. And I think a lot of the people in the recovery community is I want to encourage them to create their testimony, right? And use it because there is a common thread in that if just one person hears my story and feels better or gets better or doesn't commit suicide or makes a change in their life, then it's done. And so there's a common thread there. However, a lot of people they've got all of these challenges like, well, how do I publish the thing? And hence you've written a manual on how to get it published. And then so there's all these different worldly challenges or obstacles that get in our way of creation. But I believe that is what we are intended to do. We are intended to create. And if you were to reference the Bible, the very first thing that God tells us about himself is that he created. And so then, if we are to be created in his image, then we are also creators. And if you want to remove the religion element of it, out of it, I dare somebody who's in a dark and desperate place to try to create something. And that's why if you go into some of these mental hospitals, there's always coloring books. There's always like drawing. There's always this encouragement to like draw something and write something. And it's because it's embedded in us to want to create. And it doesn't have to be a literary work or a picture or a painting. I mean, it can be the fabrication of a product or who knows what. But I just think that oftentimes people that do end up in a dark place, they just get so overwhelmed with the world and just participating it like this mindless redundant process of going to work and going home, and people just get stuck in the rat race or on the hamster wheel, whatever you want to call it, and then creation is gone. You don't create anything. You just go to a place where they tell you what to do, you go home, you barely make it through the evening to go do it again, and that's a very bad place for anybody to be in.
It's difficult being caught up in the rat race, so to speak, or the keeping up with the Joneses, right? Especially our free market consumerism society, which has lifted more people than any other platform or governance in the history of the planet. So there's that. And I'm glad you mentioned creation because I have, this is only a piece of paper because it's a Kindle ebook exclusive. Is ET really here? Genesis doesn't say, and God created life on earth, and only on Terra life created God. It doesn't say that. So it doesn't shake my faith. In fact, it improves my faith to think God would have created life elsewhere, other places. It makes sense. It doesn't upset me. It makes sense. And this notion of pride. Pride isn't the sin. I should have pride in little Johnny hitting the walk-off home run at Little League. I should have pride in Sally getting all A's or winning the ribbon at horse jumping or whatever sport she's involved in. It's pridefulness that's different. That's hubris. That is the sin. Also, anger is not a sin. It can turn to sinful action if we don't channel the anger into positive things. But alien life as a possibility doesn't destroy faith if you're strong in your faith and you realize what Genesis does say versus your hubris of thinking you and humans are so damn important that it has to be the only intelligent life ever created anywhere. No, that's not a limitation on you. That's you trying to put a limitation on God. I'm not going to sit around for it. I'm
Yeah.
going to call
Yeah.
you out on it. You're
Joseph.
trying to box God. You lose.
Right. You crack me up because everything that I mention, you have like a book or something around you. Like, how is he doing this?
I'm going gag. I only have a dozen books, but yeah, I
I
have the
mean,
Life and Living series. I have the Christitutionalist EDU series, tinyurl.com/Christitutionalist EDU series. I have the Curiosity series about writing a book. I showed you that one. Also, Podcasting Quick Start Guide. And if you're not interested in writing a book or starting a podcast, these are more like a novel than a self help guide. Well, you and I both do a podcast. How do we do that? How does that work? If you're curious about that, hence the curiosity theories, this will help you with that. And is ET really here? It's fiction as opposed to nonfiction, but it's also about human curiosity. So, yeah, I've written about a bunch of different things, only a dozen books, though. But again, what can I do from my ugly couch? I can write books.
yeah,
That
yeah.
I can do. I can't go out and do a lot of things due to my health and my current monetary situation. So
Well,
I do what I can. But on my show, I've interviewed people who have written 40 over a 5-year period of time. I've only done 5 since
yeah,
2022. So that's really not a lot.
yeah.
It
Well, hey,
may
listen.
sound like a lot to someone who's never even fathomed writing a book, but it's not really a lot. And I like to say they may be from my hands. I may be the one typing them out on the keyboard, but I like to say they are through me, right? They
Right.
come from a greater plane, and I'm just the source typing them out.
Sure. And man, I gotta say, Joseph, you're on fire when you're talking about when you're talking about this, and your all of the work that you have done, right? All of the creation you have done. I mean, you're just like on fire about it, brother. And so good on you, man. I mean, I love it. Now it just real quickly, what is the Christitutionalist, right? What Christitutionalist?
Yes, yeah. This is Christitutionalist Politics 3. It happens to be an 8.5 by 10 size book. The other ones are, 6 by 9, smaller. But my Christitutionalist podcast, I got tired of the left right, liberal conservative paradigms. It's like Reagan said, do not come to me with Democrat or Republican. Come to me whether it lifts we the people or lifts government over the people. That's the dynamic. I wanted a new dynamic because people get knee jerk emotion when they hear left, right, Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative. So if you're a Christian or claim to be, are you really? Are you biblical? Biblical community is far different, and I go into that in my show and in my books between biblical community and worldly communism. Two very different things. And we tried Marxism on the American continent during the Bradford colony, the Mayflower Communist Compact. It was a commie compact, collective ownership, collective sharing equally, even though you may not have put in any work. The Bible does say, if you don't work, you don't eat. Now, that isn't an absolute statement. It has to be taken in context of everything else, because it also says we are to be our brother's keeper and take care of widows and orphans. There is a difference between someone who is unwilling to try to help themselves and someone like me on disability who's unable to
Right.
work and help myself. Big difference. And the Bradford colony was that. They almost all starved to death till Bradford then, as Paul Harvey would say, now you know the rest of the story, instituted individualism over collectivism, personal property rights, free markets, and the United States then went on to learn from that, and the government we were instituted as Judeo-Christian biblical community, not worldly communism. And it's why Jesus said, the poor will always be among you. That wasn't a government statement. It wasn't an economic statement. It was a human nature statement. There will always be some who expect to be given everything just because they're here. That's not how it works.
Yeah. Yeah. So the Christitutionalists, right? That's so like on your podcast, what do you dive into? What from our conversation, there's not much you don't dive into, right? So like there's so what
That's the
you
shorter list. Yeah.
so you're talking about a political you said, and I really enjoy what you had said, that you're listening to the political landscape and you don't like it. So you created your own, right? And I think, there's some people that might say you're just crazy as hell, but I say, hey, if you're not happy about it, do something about it. And here you are, right? You've done something about it. So in the podcast,
Trying again.
sure.
Attempting is what's expected. Accomplishing, well, that's a lot more open to interpretation what you accomplish or not. And again, just because you're trying doesn't mean you'll succeed. The sin is in not willing to try. And will your name appear in the book of life? That's based on shall be known by your fruits. Yes, saved through the blood is important, and why Jesus is the final blood sacrifice. We no longer sacrifice animals, but the aspect of you having to reap to sow still remains and shall be known by fruits. If you do nothing, then you're choosing to make your life worthless by at least not attempting. Like the table of contents from Christitutionalist 3. Chapter 1, in an introduction. 2, the Russia-Ukraine war. Only bad options left. 3, beauty in the eye of the beholder, right? There are different classifications. It's about being human, and it matters to us. 4, jumping to conclusions. 5, magazines and media hypocrisy. 6, big pharma questions. 7, identity politics. 8, family still under assault. I go into the Kelsey Swift engagement, pop culture. So yeah, there's nothing I won't broach, but it all is based on biblical truth, biblical
Yeah.
application rather than human emotional hysteric snowflakeism.
Snowflake, brother. Well, listen, man. I don't even know. I don't I don't even know where to really cast the most attention toward, but because you got a lot going on. But I most
Well,
certainly will.
that's the other thing too, right? Not everyone's going to be interested in this or that or the other thing. We all may be one human race. different skin tones, different subcultures have made us to believe in some different minor things, but we are all one human race. And even though we all share the DNA, our brains operate a little differently. So
Sure.
one may be interested in my fiction, another may be interested in my nonfiction. So I try to put out variety and a chance to appeal to each person's different interests. We all
Well,
have
yeah,
different interests.
but see, your interests are also quite divergent, right? So I mean, I love that. That's why I say I love that you're on fire about it, right? Because you can't put a lid on yourself, right? You need to do this and express all these thoughts about all this stuff. It's absolutely amazing. Now, I'll do my very best to like share all of the relevant links for your podcast, Christitutionalists, right? And your books. I mean, there's 12 of them, so I'll do what I can to get some.
Yeah, well, the easiest way to find that is tinyurl.com. I pay to use that link shortener
Sure,
service.
love it.
tinyurl.com/JLD for Joseph Leonard Detroit. JLD on Amazon. tinyurl.com slash
Yeah,
JLD on Amazon, and you'll find, there and other places, but,
yeah.
Amazon is still where the most books are sold.
Not to be confused with that other Joseph Leonard, right? So we wanna make that clear.
Thank you. Yes, Joseph Leonard. Again, it looks French. It's not. It's actually Polish. Leonard without an O, like Leonard Nimoy without the O in there, though. And
Love it,
mine
man.
is the last name. His was the first name.
Well, listen, man, it's been a blessing to have your time and hear about, your literary works and your rock bottom moments, man, and so I truly appreciate that. Guys, this has been
Well,
another ep
I'm lucky. Again, I'm fortunate. I indeed found something I can do from my couch and be passionate about. Others have, again, as you said, the mundane business of life. Try to find little things that indeed can give you some passion that you can do part time,
Yeah. Well,
whether that is.
that's the nugget. That's the nugget, everybody. I want you to take that to the bank. Find a tiny bit of passion and, to real quickly quote Carl Jung, oftentimes we don't find God because we don't look low enough. And so I think that's in line with what you're saying there, brother. But yes, you've been a blessing. I absolutely love the creativity. I'm going to have links for everything so everybody can come check you out, brother. And it's been another episode of the
Yeah.
next Fix.
Happy Valentine's Day to everyone. Merry belated Christmas. And
Very
no, I don't have a problem with people who say happy holidays. I've got no problem with Hanukkah for my Jewish friends. And of course, there was New Year's. It's all part of the happy holidays. And Merry Xmas is also not taking Christ out of Christmas. The Xmas comes from X Mass. Christos from the Greek Mass. Xmas is not taking Christ out of Christmas. Happy
Joseph,
holidays is not an affront to my faith.
Joseph, I love you, but we're signing off, brother. You ready? We're out of here. All
No,
right?
I don't want to go yet.